Frank McDonough, the Questionable Botanist here at the Los Angeles County Arboretum and Botanic Garden. And all day long I take questions from people regarding horticulture, gardening, plants, and all kinds of things. And I've got a treat for you today. Last year, around this time, I visited the Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton Botanic Garden greenhouses. These are down on the grounds of Cal State Fullerton, and I was able to take a look at some really neat, fascinating carnivorous plants. And I want to show you what I found down there. And here are just some of the carnivorous plants they have down there. These are Sarracenias, pitcher plants, and they're one of several pitcher type plants or pitcher trap plants. Pitfall traps are the designation for this about several different species of plants that have this type of trap to attract insects into the pitfall and down into the fluid below, which usually contains some kind of enzyme to help digest the insect. Now you notice that big flower-like thing in the middle. That is a flower. That's a Sarracenia flower. They have these very interesting shaped flowers. And in fact, I do believe that what you see on the outside are not petals, but is actually modified leaves. Here's another picture of the pitcher plants at Cal State Fullerton, their greenhouse there. And Cal State Fullerton's greenhouse is open to tours. You do have to make an appointment. The tours are free. The parking isn't, but the tours are free. And you want to call the botanic greenhouse. And I do believe the number is listed on the website. And you can schedule a tour, and you'll get this just fascinating tour of the greenhouse. Here's the bed that these are all growing in. And these beds are constructed mostly of sand and peat moss, little peat moss. They have a deionization system to keep the water free from salts. These are very salt sensitive. And they're grown in full sun down in Fullerton. Full sun is very important. A lot of people grow carnivorous plants in their house, in terrariums. Not enough sun for them. They usually wind up perishing. Another close-up of Sarracenias. This is a butterwort plant. I don't have the scientific name with me right now, but the butterwort plant has a sticky surface on those leaves, and that sticky surface attracts insects, and then it secretes enzymes and digests them. This is a Heliamphora, and Heliamphora. And amphora that grows in the sun. Amphora being a Greek vessel that these apparently appear like. Anyway, Heliamphoras, if you've seen the movie Up with Ed Asner, where the illiterate gentleman attaches balloons to his house and flies to a mesa in Venezuela. Those mesas are called tepuis. And these, or tepuis, depending on who you talk to, the tepuis have several carnivorous plants there. Sundews, carnivorous bromeliads, and lots of these Heliamphoras. They're fairly rare, so you're not going to see this out in the botanic garden. They're in a protected area. he might show, the curator may show them to you if you ask nicely. Another thing that was in the greenhouse area there in Cal State Fullerton was this plant, not a carnivorous plant. This is a Welwitschia, and Welwitschias are carnivorous plants, conifers. They produce what are equivalent to cones. You see male and female cones on this plant. These plants are very interesting. They grow in very arid deserts. They produce only 2 leaves, and they can be quite old, hundreds of years old. And very bizarre looking plants. That's Welwitschia. Here's another carnivorous plant. Now this picture was taken at our plant sale. We have a plant sale every June. The Fern and Rare Plant Society, Los Angeles Fern and Rare Plant Society, has a plant sale, and they have all kinds of neat plants there, including last year, and hopefully this year too, carnivorous plants like this Drosera, and one of the sundews. It's called a sundew because the hairs you see there have sticky globs of an adhesive-like substance that is attracted to struggling insects and eventually covers them, and then the plants will exude digestive juices that render the plant basically into very soluble fertilizer. I've talked about the plumeria garden that's going up on Tallock Knoll. I'll talk about it again. We're having a new display garden, a plumeria walk. 60 different varieties of plumeria are going to be up there, blooming their heads off. Most of these plumerias are 6 to 10 feet tall. Unlike these plumeria starts, these are plumeria cuttings, and you can see the pictures on the box. That's what the plumerias look like. When plumerias bloom, the fragrance is outstanding. In fact, plumerias are used in a lot of perfumery. We here at the Arboretum have a greenhouse full of carnivorous plants of one type, and that's Nepenthes. Nepenthes are native to Indonesia, parts of Australia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and very interesting plants. This is one of the Nepenthes in our collection. Another Nepenthes in our collection. Nepenthes are interesting. One of the things Nepenthes have that no other carnivorous plant has is an enzyme called nepenthine, which is produced in those pitchers there. The pitchers are modified tendrils at the ends of leaves. And when these first form, the fluid inside is quite acid, around pH 3 to 2, almost the same as the stomach. And the nepenthine is an enzyme that works in that acidic environment to break down insects. And interestingly, the structure of nepenthine is very similar to pepsin, which is in our stomachs, which leads you to postulate or speculate about what kind of ancestors we may have in common with these plants. 60% of the genetic material of plants is shared by humans. Or if the genes for this particular enzyme came to this plant by other methods, say horizontally through some virus. Who knows? It's interesting to think about. Here's one of my favorite picks of a Nepenthes, and this is Nepenthes maxima, which we have several plants in our Nepenthes collection. Again, we have a Nepenthes collection located just south of our greenhouse. It's between the Garden for All Seasons and the tropical greenhouse. It used to be our begonia house, and we have at least 8 or 9 different species of Nepenthes, probably more in there. And they're starting to come into, I guess you would call it, into pitcher, because these are not flowers. These are modified tendrils, and they are seasonal, and they go through periods of rest, and then they produce pitchers, then they rest, and they produce pitchers. And they're starting to produce pitchers again. They're not fully formed just yet. They probably will be in about 3-4 weeks. Depends on how the weather is. If it gets, the greenhouse is, don't believe it's heated. It's cooled, but it's not heated. And it will take a while for these to develop. Anyway, beautiful plants, by the way. It's just gorgeous. And there's a lot of interesting things, particularly about nepenthes and their relationship with insects. These plants have formed relationships with ants and spiders that allow the spiders or ants to traverse these things without danger of being trapped. In fact, the only swimming ant is an ant that's in a relationship with one of these nepenthes. Very fascinating. I usually give tours of the nepenthes greenhouse and other parts of the tropical greenhouse in the fall and very definitely in the spring with my Around the World in 127 Acres tour, which I'm going to be modifying a little bit to take in more of the world, so to speak. Anyway, that's it for the Questionable Botanist. I will be here next Tuesday, and I'll be going over questions. I'll be going over plants in our collection and all kinds of interesting stuff, so stay tuned. And until then, goodbye and good gardens.